and welcome to Felina's Pages. Today I am taking a break from poetry. Today we're talking about Emma Watson. What can I say about Emma Watson that you haven't heard before? Nothing. I can comment on her reading taste, I guess, and let's get on to reviewing books. I don't know if you can see that my face is a bit puffy. I don't think that you can see it. Maybe it's a bit red, but that's because I was literally drowning in tears yesterday. I was contributing to the rising sea levels by myself. The way I was crying, oh my god, who knew I would get a history lesson? Have my heart squeezed into pieces? The book takes place in Afghanistan over the course of several decades, from the start of the Soviet invasion to the Taliban taking over. It focuses on the lives of Maryam and Lila, two girls with very different backgrounds, and as they grow up into women, the only thing that unites them is their humanity and, of course, being women in a society determined to put them down. Maryam is what's called a harami, so she was born out of wedlock, but her mother stuck with her, and it really made me so emotional to see just the difference between how her parents treated her. So, for example, yes, her mom stuck with her, but the way that she treated her wasn't great either, and the way that both her father and her mother behaved, while understandable and you could really empathize with them, it was just another example of how pride can alienate us and to really take the time to right a wrong. It was a very raw book in the regard that you could understand like all perspectives, but of course you couldn't help but pick a side. Then Maryam is forced to marry this guy called Rashid. This next part made my blood boil. I was fuming. I could not fall asleep because I was so mad. I wanted to break stuff in half. I wanted to single-handedly fight this Rashid guy. Because Maryam was a literal child and they married her off was not that good. It was not a healthy marriage. And then Lila comes into the story and she is also forced to marry Rashid. And then Lila enters the book and she's forced to marry Rashid and they have a child together. And then the rest of the book just follows the dynamic between navigating the lives of Maryam and Lila together, and of course the relationship with Rashid in a country torn apart by war and conflict. And the book also explores and puts the foundation for the recovery of Afghanistan, for the people starting to find peace. And it's not only sad tears that I cried, there were a lot of happy tears too. At its heart, this is just a very good story, and it's a very human story at that, because many rights are put wrong. But many wrongs are not put right either. Some things just cannot be undone, and this is what makes this book so striking for me. The way that it just takes it all with its course, and life moves on, and so do we, and it leaves you with just this very hope-filled message. I didn't really think that the writing or the plot were that special, to be honest. Actually, there were kind of a lot of cliches, and when I finished the book and when I finished being emotional, and then I realized that actually, well, this is definitely not like the striking literary achievement. But the reason that I rated it so highly was purely because of enjoyability. And I know this sounds a bit contradictory because I'm saying that it's a good story even though it has a faulty plot, but it's just good in the sense that it's the kind of story that you carry with you. It's the kind of story where you can't help but really remember all the characters and just think about them. It's also very important to raise awareness about what is going on in Afghanistan, especially considering the recent events. I was a bit confused with all the resistance groups when you have a story that's just so graphic and like 70% of the book is filled with domestic abuse and just violence and people being blown to pieces. It is kind of hard to focus on remembering the names of the groups and everything like that, but I think the main point was that the timeline for me cleared, like Soviet intervention, and then the Taliban. I think it's very important to just have at least a very brief understanding, and it definitely stimulated me to go and read some news. It fills my heart with immense terror that, sadly for a lot of people, Maryam and Lila's reality is their everyday life, and it's not something fictional for them, and it's not something that can be fixed, and sometimes life just doesn't move on. And I think it's very important to see this in this book and carry away both the positive messages and the start understanding and start empathizing messages. It was also really lovely to see certain time parallels. So I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but actually I keep all my celebrity reading like videos spoiler free, because the goal isn't really to read like a celebrity, right? To just like have their choices influence us, although that is part of the fun process. It's also to discover new books, and I don't see a point in me talking about books and spoiling the whole thing for you, because then you can't read them, right? So I do try to keep these reviews spoiler free, and I won't comment on much more, but I will say that there are certain time parallels in this book, like for example, connections sort of between the life of Miriam and her mother and Lila and their family and then their children. And I think it was just very lovely to witness, because every character made their own kind of journey. Of course, every journey was different, but it was just very satisfying to see it all come to a conclusion, and I ended up giving this book 4.25 stars. I know that this is a book that I will end up recommending, and the 4.25 stars is purely just everything that I didn't like and everything that I liked averaged out. I haven't read any other Hassini books. I know The Kite Runner. I know The Kite Runner. Everyone is talking about The Kite Runner, but I still haven't gotten around to it. Honestly, after this book though, I'm way more motivated to do it, but I do need some time to recover, because I feel like my cheeks have still not recovered from all the puffiness. I don't know why, but I've always thought that Toni Morrison's books are like very exploring mother-daughter relationships in a slow-paced way, the legacy of slavery brilliantly and beautifully, and just a romantic book with like historical retrospection and memories. And little did I know what I was getting into. I was going into a literal ghost story, and a terrifying one at that, because the most terrifying stories are the ones grounded in reality, the ones that you can't help but read and think about how unsettling everything is. Toni Morrison's Beloved is that book for me. I don't know why we associate everything like what I said before was Toni Morrison. If that's what you're expecting and you're thinking that you'll be bored, no. I think it's the Toni spelled with an I thing, that you're picturing this like dainty like lady sipping tea or whatever. Toni gets things done. Toni with an I, Toni Morrison, is a brilliant writer, and she gets those things across. She doesn't shy away from the gritty reality. Toni Morrison gets the words written that I wish never had to be written, but that nonetheless are now important to recognize and to remember this history. Okay, so now you might ask, what is the story about? You've intrigued me. Well, I hope I did at least. This book is set in a house that is filled with venom, that is filled with spite, and this house is haunted by the ghosts of the past. The novel is written in third person and follows Sethi, a slave who ran away, and also her daughter, Denver. In the house, there also used to be Denver's grandmother and her two brothers, but one by one, they can't handle the reality of the house and all the dark history behind it, and so they leave. The book is based on the true story of Margaret Gardner, a slave who ran away, and when she saw that she was going to be captured, trigger warning, she would rather her baby not be alive than be taken into slavery. And this is just the kind of situation that I think accurately reflects. It's with stories like these that truly show just how terrible slavery was, that people were driven to this point of desperation, that they would rather that their child was dead than be born into slavery, because of course the living conditions were terrible, life was terrible, just the very action of it was despicable. This book really doesn't shy away from that. There are graphic descriptions of punishment like whipping and sexual assault, and number 124, as it is called, is possessed with Sethi's daughter, because Sethi is Margaret Gardner here. It's like her fictionalized story, and her daughter crawls up the stairs. She leaves handprints in the house. Morrison creates an extremely heavy, cloying, unsettling atmosphere that you can't escape. Once you're in that house, you can't put the book down. You can't leave it. And neither can the ghost of Beloved, Sethi's daughter. The sentences have such a beautiful quality about them. The way that Morrison writes, it's so simple but yet infused with meaning. 50 pages in and you're already invested in all the characters. I feel like I know them. I feel like I am personally living there, experiencing their emotions. And yes, the novel is in third person, but it feels like you're that third person, almost like you're the one telling the story. Also, if you're a fan of character development, the way that Denver grew up and matured had me in tears. I don't know why I was so emotional these past few weeks, but seriously, just seeing her journey as like going from a young woman to a woman taking care of herself and of her family, and just maturing and growing up and really like sorting through her thoughts about all of this situation, all of these tiny little details that show maturity, was just incredible to witness. This book book is for you if you love domestics and also a good atmosphere of suspense. And also a rumination on memory. The type of thing that Proust does, as in like switching between the past and the present and having objects prompt memories. Except for a meandering walk through Europe, you're taking a gritty demonstration of history. History at its lowest. And honestly, out of all the books in this video, I rated this one the highest, 4.5 stars, and I really enjoyed it, and I hope you do give this one a chance, because out of all the hyped classics, I think this one is definitely on my list of those that deserve it. That being said, you should definitely check trigger warnings. I am trying not to traumatize people with my reviews, but the books in this video are not cheery today. Yikes. Maybe that's what I can end my review of the last book on, just like a simple one-word review, yikes. Because this book, sure, there were many things that I loved, but there were also just so many things that I hated. This is a memoir, but it's the kind of memoir that people call genre-defying. I don't know if you have experiences that were genre-defying. Usually that's a bit of blending some fiction, and it doesn't always work out well. I love it in The Dream House. The mix of fiction and non-fiction is incredible. Cindy's book taste is fantastic. I enjoyed, like, without exception, all of the books that I read for that video, which you should check out when I had worse lighting. I don't know what Emma Watson thought of this. It was just in her book club pick. I think she ended up liking it. But for me, the integration of memoir and theory was not effective. Okay, so the book talks about the author's relationship with a gender fluid person called Henry, and they start taking testosterone and they have an operation. And after the operation, they unwrap the bandage around the breasts. When Henry unwraps the bandages, for them, it's a moment of utter joy. It's a moment of feeling like you belong. However, on TV, there's a woman who has breast cancer, and she's doing the same thing. And just this comparison between the same action, but holding such different meanings for different people. Some passages are witty, some passages are sad, some passages, like I said, really resonate with you. I think about that passage a lot now. Both Beloved and the Argonauts are by no means very long books, but when you finish with them, you feel like you've traveled miles. And honestly, it's not that I wasn't immersed in the Argonauts. It's just that I guess maybe I can't relate to this enough. I don't know. I just didn't feel like the book was overall that effective or unique with the whole like quoting and like introducing famous theorists, if you know what I mean. To explain, there are sentences and there are passages, and then like amidst the passage, there's just a quote from a prominent authority that people read on the subject, like for example Butler, of course, on gender. This had very heavy Roland Barthes influence in the way that some of those theory bits were written. I can't explain it, but I just couldn't help but think of A Lover's Discourse. It's just the same sort of vibe from the book. I enjoyed A Lover's Discourse a lot, but this book I just couldn't really get on board with. It felt superficial a lot of the times. It felt almost like, I don't want to say pseudo-intellectual, but it was clearly a very personal book for the author, and you could feel that, and there was emotion infused in particular into the sentences about her experiences with Henry. But these passages of theory and trying to like highlight the point, it seemed very surface level to me and very steering you towards a certain topic or towards a certain thought, rather than just letting the author's emotions and genuineness speak for itself. Okay, I recognize these names, Baudrillard, Butler, and Barthes, of course. I am familiar with the works. I know some of the key theses, but I haven't read the works in full, and I guess maybe I just don't like have this deep love for them that I can't appreciate these like sociological references. There are certain passages, like I said, that I loved. I just want to make that clear that it's not a bad book, but that ultimately this was just not what I wanted from this. It was not so unique. I was expecting just this groundbreaking work of queer theory and memoir as it was marketed, but I just did not find anything that was particularly striking to me that I will remember for the rest of my life. I just won't recommend this one, and I would give it 2.75 stars. Overall, I'm very happy with the books I read for this video. Beloved was very thought-provoking, 1,000 Splendid Suns was very emotional, and The Argonauts was just a motivation for me to read more theory. I do enjoy reading theory, but it has been busy these past couple of weeks. Emma Watson's taste is, I would say, overall, with my subjective opinion, but I hope that you trust my reviews. Her taste is as good as her acting, and honestly, her roles, I will look back on the books that I read for this video, like I look back on her roles with very like a sort of fond and nostalgic feeling, because I am very glad that I read those books, and I will be continuing with the Beloved trilogy because I forgot to mention that it's a trilogy. It definitely impressed me enough to continue with the series. Thanks so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you either later this week or next week getting back to poetry because the exams are coming up. Tell me what your favorite Emma Watson role is, and also if you've read any of these books, comment on them. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.